Well, thank you for your patience,
Yeah,
Jim,
man.
and your time. I know you're very busy, as we all are these days. So here we go.
Here we go. Love it.
So you were saying, yeah, you've been quite busy. You were just saying that you've been doing how many podcasts in the last 36 hours?
This would be number 4.
Busy, busy, busy.
Wow.
Getting the word
Yeah,
out there.
yeah. A lot of neat stuff happening. A lot of people see the solution that we got it, and now it's
Yeah.
execution and we're inspiring. It's happening fast.
Yes.
All right. Hi,
Let's talk
Jim.
about, yeah,
I'm
this
Bill.
is Bill, my co-host, Bill
Hey,
Riddell,
Bill.
Jim Gale, our
Awesome.
guest today. Yeah.
After all that anxiety right there and anxiousness, and then here's a video. There's Jim. I've seen you remotely on some other podcasts you've done.
Yeah.
So it's good that you're here.
I'm glad to be here.
Hey, Johann, should I tell Jim a little bit of the story, how we thought of Jim?
Yeah, let's do that.
So,
yep. And then we'll let him take it away.
Yeah, I farmed full-time with the family for 30 years. Good friends, the Kennels that live on Airlie Road. I've known Aaron Kennel for a long time. I met him, reconnected with Aaron at a outdoors show. He had a booth there, and it was a food forest. His booth. You may remember Aaron. I'm hoping you remember Aaron in Polk County in Oregon. Yeah.
Yes.
And Aaron and I started talking. I was like, and he didn't know that I had retired from the farm. I didn't know he was doing the food forest thing. And I'm like, and BioAg, many organic inputs, our biostimulant lines,
Nice.
nutrition, soil amendment. And so we totally, geeked together.
Yeah.
And then he said, you need to check this guy out. This is Jim Gale. Jim Gale's, this is his vision. And I'm on board. And of course, then I checked in. And then I told Johann, I said, hey, here's a podcast thought. Fits right in, and I said, let's get Aaron on. And Johann said, why don't we just go for Jim? Let's call Jim and go right to the horse's mouth. So here we are. That's all.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, Aaron. And I'm super glad to be here, guys.
Yeah, absolutely. So Jim, so a little bit about BioAg, because I'm not sure if you've looked into our company and the podcast. This is an offshoot of our company. We manufacture and market biostimulants. So we are in the business of producing products that fall into the biostimulant category that helps plant do what they already do, but better. So
Awesome.
It helps with nutrition. It helps with the products help with stress, build soil with not only the plants, but the microbial community. And when we learned of food forest abundance, we thought this is going to fit right in with the BioAg podcast, because our goal with the podcast is to produce quality content for listeners regarding all facets of agriculture, regenerative, greenhouse, you name it, including home gardening. And when we learned of food forest abundance, thought, this is great with kind of this resurgence in the homesteading movement, with people really COVID, the pandemic, right? People really started to get back into investing in their homes and their gardens, and thought, well, this is great. So thank you very much for joining us. Your title is Chief Storyteller. So please tell us a story. Tell us about food.
We all love that title, by the way. We all aspire to have that title. We love that title.
That's great. I love it.
It's, it's in the story. The narrative is what basically runs our world, right? And which narrative do we choose? Do we choose, and the word choice, by the way, is 99% of the time it is misrepresented, because the word choice implies the awareness of choice, right? So most of the time there's no awareness in the program, right? The narrative, the story that comes from the entities in our world that are causing destruction is a fear-based story. It's a story of scarcity and lack and destruction. And we want to change that story. In permaculture, we turn the problem into the solution. So as the chief storyteller, it's my joyful duty, my joyful obsession to tell a story of a world of incredible abundance. And basically, it's a very easy story to tell, Victor Hugo said there's one thing stronger than all of the armies of the world, and that is an idea whose time has come. He didn't say a new idea, right? The idea whose time has come is one of lightmente or enlightenment and the Garden of Eden, the place of abundance everywhere, not the place of re-legion, which means rejoining the Roman army. A legion is a Roman army. I'm talking about the place of absolute logic and abundance and health and joy and diversity and love. And so that's the story that I like to tell.
Excellent. So with Food Forest Abundance, it's a fairly new company. What were you doing before Food Forest Abundance?
Food Forest Abundance, it was 2007 when I first learned what was going on in the world. I had my first two daughters, and I learned permaculture, and I learned who was in control of the narrative. And those three things caused me to go down the rabbit hole, and I had about 2 years of cognitive dissonance where I had competing thoughts in my head, and these thoughts were very different. And that causes an agitation, a disconnect, and a stress, right? And confusion. And I spent 2 years. I had sold a mortgage company that did about $1.3 billion in volume. I had bought a boat, lived on the ocean for a year. And then I was in Costa Rica. And I love the nature, by the way, the jungle there, the vibration, the diversity, the cicadas. It's one of the most biodiverse places in the world, which drew me to there. And so then I read Bill Mollison's quote after this 2 years of kind of down the rabbit hole. And it's, though the problems of our world are increasingly complex, the solutions remain embarrassingly simple. And I started to sob, I started to bawl, and I made a commitment at that moment that I'm going to focus my life on the solutions for the sake of my 4 daughters now and my family and all this world that I love. And so when you focus on something obsessively, I actually literally intentionally, I've got a master's in neurolinguistics, and I created belief systems out there to engage my reticular activating system and my spirit, my soul, as to how do we solve these problems at scale? How do we catalyze a shift in consciousness at scale that leads to mass adoption of the most logical thing we could ever do? And that's to love and to serve and to treat our bodies, our minds, our stomachs, and our properties and our world intelligently.
Right on.
Yeah.
So help us understand what Food Forest Abundance is. Is it you started the company, what I think it said established 2020?
Yeah.
It's a formal establishment. Tell us more about Food Forest Abundance.
So it goes back to the question, what is the idea whose time has come? And Food Forest Abundance, we design and install food forests all over the world. And we use the permaculture principles, which are well defined. They're incredible and they're so simple. The process of mimicking nature, looking and observing what happens in a very abundant natural system, and then asking the question, how can we improve that? How can we take this element over here and this thing over here? And how can we stack the functions in order to serve us in a way that also serves everything else? Right? And that's where this idea of the Garden of Eden comes in. When we stack a food forest where we've got roots and tubers underground, and we've got the herbaceous layer with the mushrooms and a lot of the herbs and medicines, and then we've got the shorter plants, the taller plants, shrubs and bushes and fruit trees, and then you've got a 7-layer food forest, and there's actually more layers than that, but you've got 7 layers, including the vines that go up. So in a particular area, you can explode the amount of life relative to a lawn, right? So then I like breaking things down to the lowest common denominator. We've got 40 million acres approximately of lawn in the United States alone. When we inspire the transition of 50% of that 40 million acres into regenerative edible landscapes, we expose the poisons and the poison producers, and then we take the poisons out and we supplant the poisons with natural, source-given or God-given methods. Then we reverse mass extinction, we reverse deforestation, cancer, diabetes, heart disease, we end hunger, and we end tyranny. all by doing what's best for us in our own backyards.
By replacing the lawns.
Yes, half the lawns. I like
Half
lawns.
the
People
Yeah,
think I
I do
hate
too.
lawns.
Yeah.
I just ignorance and insanity is what isn't working. So let's replace that with wisdom. And everything I'm saying, nothing's hypothetical. It's all proven all over the world.
Yeah, and I'm glad you say you like lawns too, because I've got dogs, and I'm looking at having reviewed the website and looking, and I think I'd love to do that, and I'm sure a lot of people out there, obviously they do, because your company is thriving and growing. Is, like, how much space do you need? Like, for example, I have dogs, so
Yeah.
I'd like to have my little bit of real grass. I don't like to have the artificial turf. I think that's probably even worse, in my opinion, than lawns. Maybe it
It's
isn't. Maybe.
dead. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
death. It
But
represents death. Yeah.
so what you're saying is taking lawns, taking typical landscapes where it's predominantly non-edible plants, non-medicinal plants, and converting it into a system that is layered, and not just edible plants, but you're talking about building the fungal community, planting herbs, medicinal plants, edibles, but in a way that it all works together in a cycle. Correct?
Exactly. So yes, you started out with how much land do you need? You can do a guild with one fruit tree. Pick your favorite fruit tree, which already grows well in your area. Put that fruit tree in and put a guild around it. A guild is a community of plants that support each other. So you've got a bunch of nitrogen fixers, legumes, beans and peas and perennial peanut and mimosa. And then you put your beneficial insect attractors, which are flowers, right? So now you've got your soil builders. Maybe you'll put a Mexican sunflower or some chop and drop next to that as well. So you're now building soil while you're providing food, right? Which is the exact opposite of how our current agricultural industry teaches the world. And by the way, Bill Mollison said that agriculture practices taught in school over the last 70 years are the most destructive teaching in the history of our world. And they are, and it's not by accident, it's by design, it's by control. So when we take on 180 square foot on the ground, right, even on smaller than that, on 100 square feet, you can put a guild in that will produce a lot of food every year, and with very little maintenance, about the same maintenance as the lawn.
Gotcha. So, considering that homeowners would probably need a lot of help, how do they go about doing this? How does food forest abundance? How do they help
Yeah,
the consumer, the homeowner? And I'll say consumer, meaning it could be a homeowner, it could be a landscape
yeah,
HOA, it could be a landscape company. How do they start how do they get the help that they need? Because I'm sure
gotcha.
that's it's not something that's, I mean, it's easy to do, but they need help in doing it.
Yeah. So we like to teach it from every perspective because our mission is to, well, we need to make changes and we need to make them pretty much now. And so we teach people on $20. You can go to the store and buy your favorite fruits and veggies. Buy the ones that still have the seeds that haven't had the seeds genetically bred out of them. And go on YouTube, eat what you eat, save the seeds from the middle of the plant, or if it's a strawberry, from the outside of the plant, right? It's the only fruit that has the seeds on the outside. And then go on YouTube and look up, how do I propagate cucumber seeds, tomato seeds, anything, any one of them, apples and all of it, strawberries, that's a lot of fun. So you could do that for $20. What most people do, what our customers do, is they want to speed up time. So they hire us and they get a food forest landscape blueprint or a custom design, which every design we do is custom based on the agricultural zone, based on the customer's property and the customer's desires. Some people want to be big time involved in their food forest. Some people want more annuals, while other people only want perennials. And the difference is profound. Now, your listeners know the difference, right? But a lot of people don't know. Annuals are plants you plant once, and then you harvest, you take the seeds, and you plant again. Perennials, like fruit trees and berry bushes and many hundreds of thousands more, you plant them once, and they'll grow for sometimes thousands of years. Right? So they're generational. right? So our permaculture's general focus is on perennial food forests. However, nowadays we really like to stack annuals in as well for the quicker turnaround time.
Yeah. Yeah. That everybody's so into instant gratification. I think the annuals is probably good because then they can see the fruits of their labor.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's really neat because as I was preparing for this podcast episode, I'm looking. I live in a fairly nice, well kept HOA in the central part of Arizona. A lot of xeriscaping, a lot of rocks, not a lot of cactus. But I look around our subdivision. It's about, I don't know, it's over 2,000 homes, I think, and we have the green belts and things like that. And as I'm thinking about going into this podcast and I'm thinking about what you're doing, I'm thinking, how could our HOA do something, and how could HOAs, how could communities across the country do this? And even to the point where if you go to a botanical garden and you see the nameplates, so that way, because education is huge. We hear
Huge.
it time and time again. Our guest,
Yeah.
we interviewed a dairy farmer not long ago and asked him, what's the number one thing you want consumers to know? And he said, I just want them to get educated.
Yeah.
So I think that's all of our mission here, is to educate as well,
Yes.
because the more we're educated about, the mind, um, the better off we'll be. So I'm curious. So, what are some
I
of the
can jump in on that.
Yeah,
On
please do.
HOAs. So we are actually designing right now for about 5 or 6 major HOAs. One is in a allodial title community on an island country where they're going completely allodial title, which means nobody above, no taxes, no governmente on there. And we're designing their whole landscape to be food forests everywhere, right? And then I've got one in here close to me in Central Florida, a similar thing, but they've got a 6-acre piece. And we're going to start with that 6-acre common area. And we're putting the narrative together right now, the proposal, so they can take it to their HOA with exactly what that means for the community. And when you layer out the bullet points of the benefits, it's the best by far investment that any community could invest in. The massive amounts of diversity and food and habitat and butterflies and bees and joy, it stacks all the functions. So yes, HOAs are definitely something when we get into the thinking process of the HOA leaders. And some of them come back to us and say, yeah, but what if somebody eats one of the lawyers? The lawyers,
Right.
the word
Liability.
legal.
Yeah.
The word legal means the undoing of God's law, right? The whole legal system is a big barrier between us and freedom and health of our society. So we are coming back at the lawyers saying, okay, wait a minute. So you're worried about one person out of these 5,000 people who live in this HOA maybe dying. It's a 1 in a million based on the stats, but you're worried about that. Well, how come you're not worried about diabetes? 30, 40, 50% of them are going to die in the next 20 years with diabetes, cancer, and heart disease, if not 70%. So now we're going to go back to the lawyer and say, we're going after you for killing all these people. Why not?
In my
we can show those facts.
Yeah. That's a huge issue with HOAs. I don't know a lot about it. I'm a fairly new homeowner. Purchased my home in the last few years, and I see a lot of the things that come up that make no sense when it comes to that. So I'm glad to see you're making headway there, or to hear that, and starting with the leadership, because that's where it have to understand. There's so many other liabilities as well. So producing food in your community,
It's job one. It's the most logical, beneficial thing we could ever do for ourselves as individuals, for selfish reasons, for our families, for our communities, and for our world. It literally solves all of the world's biggest problems, what I'm talking about.
It's funny. I wrote that question down, and I think you just spoke these very words, Jim. The most fundamental skill and need of families is personal food production. And we don't do it anymore. We don't. I was on the farm. I always had a garden. I didn't feed my family with it. I didn't understand the permaculture. But what you guys are talking about with it really is a paradigm shift. So I've been on the journey. You said earlier, Jim, conventional agriculture or agriculture education in the last, what did you say, 50 years has been the single most detrimental teaching, right? I came from that. I have a 4-year science degree in agriculture from Oregon State University. I farmed conventionally. I've been on the journey with BioAg, understanding, biology, the bigger picture. And I know a tiny bit now. I knew nothing before. I know a tiny bit now, but you're asking HOAs, you're asking people in town to make that journey.
Yeah.
And what you said, education is the start. But that's what it takes, that paradigm shift.
It
right?
does.
Yeah.
And so we're demonstrating. Now we've got over 400 demonstration sites in the works all over the world. And we are just one entity, Food Forest Abundance. Permaculture has thousands and thousands of demonstration sites all over the world. The property we're building at Galt's Landing, it's a very nice property. It's 52 acres on a private lake with a runway on the east coast of the property, which we're looking to acquire, and 10 lots. It's sold out. And we're putting so many food systems in there. When people say, what are your HOA dues? I ask them, what do you think our dues are here for this, tennis court and really nice? And they're like, I don't know, $750, $1,000 a month. I'm like, no, we share the profits. They're like, what are you talking about? So we don't have dues. We use our land wisely. We share the profits. Our land is not a liability. It's an asset. And we treat it as such.
I'm glad you brought that up, because that was going to be my next point in question regarding, say, homeowner associations. Is I picked that up from an interview I listened of yours here recently about asset versus liability and production. So what you're suggesting is that you're producing and selling the produce that you're harvesting from the property, in addition to what maybe is being shared amongst the residents.
Yeah. We'll have way more food than the residents can eat. So then we're also going to be, because put it this way, when the food supply chain is in process of collapsing, the whole thing is coming down. It's supplant, and we got to supplant it with something good, because what they want us to supplant it with is not good. It's more technocracy, it's more control, and it's really famine on a massive level. So when we don't want to be the only ones growing food, and for all sorts of reasons, including love and including selfishness. When you combine those two as a service, then we're going to supply all of our neighbors with food and help them grow food, and then it just goes. Shoo.
Yep, abundance. Well, that's one of the things, and I want to come back to some more agronomic parts of this, but one of the things that came up for me as I was studying and preparing for this is food deserts. That probably those areas of need, impoverished areas of our country. I've spent some time with inner cities and urban farming. Spent some time with Will Allen several years ago, and his organization Willpower, and I met a gentleman probably a decade ago. His name is Chef Jeff, and Chef Jeff I think he's from California. He ended up spending time in prison because he was, ended up selling drugs. And when he tells his story, the reason why he said he turned to drugs, one of the main reasons was because he was hungry.
Yeah.
As a young adult in school, said I couldn't focus on while I was in school because I was hungry. And so I'm thinking, well, if that's his story, that's got to be a common story amongst many other people. So if we could do one thing is make sure that people have food, nutritious food in their stomachs. One, they may not necessarily turn to crime. One, they'll be able to cognitively think better and focus, which is going to help them advance, so on and so forth.
Yeah.
So when I think of food forest abundance, I'm thinking of really like the areas in need first before my HOA, where I've got a grocery store just around the corner, where in other parts of the country, there's not a grocery store.
Here's our solution to that. I met with some people that own a lab, an incubator in the heart of, as a part of Orlando, that is more than 50% below the poverty line. where they usually get their food from 7-Eleven or Church's Chicken or somewhere like that. I don't call it food, but they're whatever they put in their bodies. And we are going to work with a pastor there, and we're going into this church, which is right in the heart of this area. And we are going to build food forests on public areas at the church for the community itself. Now, we want to stack the function of this. So how do we do that? Well, I've met with a guy running for mayor of this area, of which is a $5.5 billion budget. It's the fifth most visible county or place to run for mayor in the world, or in the United States anyway. And we're going to bring the social media influencers, we're going to bring the community, and we're going to bring a politician running. And we're creating a political campaign whereby he runs on the platform of using the communities and the people's resources wisely, putting food forests all over Orlando and Orange County. And he'll get all of the Republicans, not except for the rhinos. He'll get all the independents, and he'll suck over some of the Democrats, because this solves all of what they say they care about, including the carbon footprint narrative, which I'm not a big fan of. So the beauty is, this is the answer to all of it. And when we do it logically and strategically, we bring the politicians in, the social media influencers, and the community, and we actually plant the food forest, and we share with them what that means and how to harvest food and all this amazing things. That's a world changer.
Yeah. Or at least it'll force them to say, if this is really what you truly believe and what you truly want, here's a solution.
Exactly. And we're giving this political strategy to the world. It's a campaign strategy that we're designing and we'll have out on the 4th of July, and we're sharing it with every politician in the world who wants to run for office.
Yeah, which it really should be apolitical.
Yeah, exactly. I want him to be an independent. He's currently running as a Republican. I'm a big fan of independence, but anyway, it is what it is. And He's a good guy, and he's for medical freedom as well. Otherwise, I would not be working with him.
So in these types of areas that we're talking about, and this is the other question that come up from the agronomic point of view, when laying the groundwork, do you all, the installers, those building these systems, what type of groundwork are you doing? Are you taking soil tests to make sure that in the urban environments we're not dealing with contaminated soil before we go in and plant the plants? Because that's one of my concerns in urban areas. Is it's great, it'd be awesome to do this, but we want to make sure we're starting with clean soil.
So we focus on building soil because soil is the immune system of our planet. And when we build soil, so we'll start with whatever we start with. Now, yes, we do soil tests, because then we know if it's very alkaline, we'll get a truckload of pine straw, right? There's different ways to mitigate certain things and to increase yield in a very intelligent ROI type of scenario. So we'll do the soil test, but no matter what it is, we'll build soil. If it's radioactive, we'll plant hemp in there, and that sucks out the radioactivity, right? There's all these different natural solutions, but the bottom line for our world is to take the poisons out and replace them with natural systems.
Yeah, excellent. You'd mentioned at the beginning of the podcast spending some time in Costa Rica, and it's interesting that you mentioned that, because a couple years ago, my family and we are watching Down to Earth with Zac Efron, the show with Zac Efron and Darren Olean, and one of the episodes was Costa Rica, and there was a commune. It was kind of a community that had I don't know if it was. I think it may have been its own island or something.
Stephen's place, yes.
Yeah, and I just thought it was really neat. My wife and I were looking at each other like, maybe we ought to look into Costa Rica, because it was just that. They step off the boat, they get on the island, they're walking up, and of course it's Costa Rica, and you can grow a lot of plants there all year. But it was, we'll just, as they're walking up to the property, they just stop over and they're just munching on some I don't even know, what it may have been cocoa or something like that. And it was just neat. And we're like, we grow our own food. The whole ecosystem here just supplies itself. We have very few inputs that we're putting into it. It just feeds itself. I thought, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. Darren's a partner. He's my partner.
Oh, nice.
And he loved that, man. He's full speed ahead with solutions.
Yeah. Well, I love that whole series, and I advocate anyone that I meet. I was like, you got to check it out.
Yeah.
It is really, really neat. And all the different places that they go and all the different things that you learn. I highly recommend that to anyone who's not seen it to check it out. I even appreciate there's one scene where I don't remember which episode or where they go, but Darren's telling Zach, he said, we need to get grounded. Like, what do you mean? He's like, we got to go out and just take our shoes off and just kind of like putting the toes in the sand, but just connect with the soil where you're at and really just kind of tie into it. I thought, yeah, that's pretty neat.
Beautiful.
I could get into that.
Yeah, no, an amazingly wise guy, great friend, great partner, and he's part of the launch on July 4th. That's going to change the world.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
What is this launch on July 4th? What's that all about?
So we're bringing together all of the elements of the architecture of the strategy that we've put in place. And we're meeting on the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. And we've got Emmy Award winners, world-class documentarians and journalists and imams and priests and pastors and rabbis and bankers who are now into Tao banking, which is humanities banking and not top down, but bottom up. We're bringing together the digital asset that is linked to growing food, all the different pieces of the puzzle. And we're going to strategize for 4 strategy sessions, and then we're going to launch as a joint voice, as one voice. And I'm not a fan of like-minded, except for one thing that's bringing us together, and that's freedom. Diversity is the joy of life, right? Like-minded is really one thought. While we are incredibly diverse in our thinking, other than our bond, which is freedom. And so when we launch, we're going to launch what's called a thunderclap. And we are going to launch through every podcaster and influencer and personality that wants to. And so far, every single podcaster says, yeah, I'd like to share that message with the world. So I'm inviting you to do so as well. And imagine when this one message goes out through hundreds of podcasters with hundreds of millions of listeners, it'll change the world.
Yeah. Yeah. We'd love to know more about that and be involved in how we can.
Awesome.
Absolutely. Because we share a common mission at BioAg, our company. We do. We produce safe, sustainable products. We want to make sure that that anything that's being consumed with the products that are grown using our products are safe, healthy for the environment. I'm glad you say the like-mindedness. Yeah, what I'm hearing is, there's definitely something wrong, I think, with the echo chamber groupthink, right? You get too many. Yeah. So I appreciate what you said there and where you're going with it. And yeah, we'd look forward to learning and knowing more about.
And a lot of good permaculture designers, right? Designers
Nice.
are permaculture is permanent culture, right?
Yeah.
We're bringing in permanent culture designers, which is the same thing as saying sustainable culture or regenerative culture.
Yeah.
And you know what I'd like to do, if you want to, is I love strategy. And so if you want to talk about how we collaborate, I think your audience would really find this interaction very interesting, as to how would we best collaborate because that's how we change the world. When we collaborate, we win this. We're at war, and we win the war simply by working together to bring these amazing regenerative practices to inspire and empower to the world. So how do you imagine us working together with your entity?
I think that's a great question. Well, we are in the business of helping build soils as well. A lot of the things that we're doing, the humic substances that we have, making plants stronger against stress, right? Just helping the plants do what they do, but better, and enhancing the processes, the nutrient use efficiency, because there's going to be some help along the way. I'm sure once you, on a grand scale, every now and again, your system may end up becoming out of balance. We'll maybe want to tweak that. We don't want to do that with salt-based fertilizers. We want to come in with other things and help with the biology. And we have a robust network of people that not only just at our company, but others. And I was just getting ready to think, Bill, that Alex, he studied, I think, permaculture at OSU. I think one of his professors is pretty strong in the permaculture uh, area. So I mean, we could branch out not just with BioAg, but with others as well, even if it's just making introductions. But yeah, I'm sure I personally would like to be involved and
Yeah.
help collaborate. I'm always down to collaborate,
So you've
both
got a
personally and
physical,
professionally. Go
okay,
ahead.
so you've got a physical product, right? A product that you ship all over the nation.
All over the
Over
world.
the
Yep.
world.
Yep.
All over
Several.
the world. That's
Yeah.
fantastic. So we've got a network of food forest designers and installers that work all over the world, and it's growing fast. And I'm sure yours is too, as it should. So we combine these networks. We offer your products through our network, and we become basically a sales entity, a marketing entity. That's how we do it. We spread the word. We inspire by getting the word out about what's possible and the vision of humanity that's beautiful. We empower by giving people the exact action steps to take so that they can do this at home and enjoy the process. So that your product is an empowering product.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, my testimony with some of our products is I don't currently have a garden. I feel guilty that I don't, but that's going to change this fall. I've got an area. I'm going to do some raised beds. We may
Yeah.
change out some of the trees for some food crops, which is why I want to kind of maybe get with Food Forest Abundance to figure out what might be the right trees
Yeah.
to
We'll
put
trade
in.
you a design for your products, and then I'll
There we go.
showcase your products at Gall's Landing for
There
real.
we go.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can tell you, I've had my landscaper come by, my landscape installer. He's out of that business now. He's doing just installs. He's not doing the maintenance. And the other day he came by and I said, "Remember how bad the trees looked last fall? I thought I was getting a virus." And anyway, I really kind of hit the plants hard with BioAg products. And I said, "I don't know." I said, "How do they look?" And he said, "The trees are maybe 3 years old. They're still fairly small." But he said, "You've got some of the best looking trees in the neighborhood. The leaves
Wow.
are very big, very green, very lush."
Yeah.
And I said, "Okay, we're doing something right."
Yeah.
Right? And very
That's
minimal
beautiful.
inputs. I mean, that's the thing when it comes to the homeowner side of things with the use of our products. Very simple, and they can be applied weekly. You just go
Yeah.
out and spray the leaves. I'll be happy to explain a lot more
Yes,
about what we
let's get
do.
into that detail after the call, because
Yeah.
what I want to do is I want to showcase what you're talking about at Galt's Landing, because we've got a lot of videos and film on this, and we do showcasing. And I'm starting with the ultimate blank canvas. It's almost sand, like it's inert. It was down 25 feet underground, and we had to dig a pond. We raised up our area by about 6-7 feet, and now it's just a blanket of sand as our blank canvas. So then we're using that as a foundation to
Wow.
grow our food. So we're adding all these layers, and what you're talking about could be a great layer.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
I'm
Yep.
interested, Jim, that no one working, in the humate world has approached you. And we have a whole nutrition line, and then the humate line. I'm just curious that no one's really approached you and said, "Hey, you're a soil builder. We're soil builders."
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Well, here we are. Isn't that
Yeah.
beautiful?
Hey,
There
we're
you
the
go.
first of the party then, Bill.
There you go.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had a thought, guys, I want to share, and we will obviously continue with our discussion on that on another time, but we've touched on this a bit. And we mentioned it earlier about a fundamental, this food forest abundance, empowering people with a fundamental ability to feed themselves, to remove, like you said, Jim, remove the poisons, bring in the medicine. But one thing we really haven't talked about too much, and this has been shown during the COVID time, it's been shown anytime there's a downturn in the economy, people like to get into the yard.
Yeah.
A big part of that empowerment is getting your hands in the soil. I've always been a soil guy. I love to get my hands in the soil. I love to feel it. I love to look at the texture, the structure, because I'm a farmer. That's what I've done. I'm not the only one. There's something so fundamental about that, being in touch with soil, that you can't replace with anything else. Yeah, and that's the other part of this, your vision that you're talking about, Jim. And that is a big part of it. Wouldn't you agree?
It is a part of it that people don't realize until they experience it. And when people have a food forest in their yard, it draws them in with a smile. They literally want to stand in the midst of the food forest. And by the way, there's some science done on the act of looking at a flower or looking at a forest, and it elevates your health. Right? This is very scientific. Now, when you have a thriving food forest, it's like it's like the spring of life. It's like the, what is that called? The eternal fountain of youth, right? Where you're standing there and you've got and there's documentaries called grounding, something about grounding, where you're standing barefoot connected to the vibration of the sentient earth. And it's just, what you're saying is so profoundly true. And most people have been so disconnected from that they don't realize it.
Yeah. Horticulture therapy is a real thing.
Yeah.
That I think there's a book or something. It's called like 3 days, where you just 3 days in a forest camping has a profound effect on your mental health. And it's limiting. We don't have the victory garden movement was 80 years ago. We're not. There's this
It's coming
renaissance, if
back.
you will. Yeah,
Yeah.
I
It's a
belong to a
renaissance.
group of a very eclectic people from all different walks of life, because we all kind of follow this one gentleman who was in the military, 22 years, special forces, and he's kind of a badass in a way, right? But he watches birds, and he has gardens. And now all these other guys, law enforcement officers and psychotherapists, because again, it's a really broad group of people. Now they're all planting gardens, right? It's all across the board. People are saying, you know what? I realize I may not be able to
Yeah.
completely feed myself. I don't have an acre of land that I can dedicate to producing all the food that my family needs, but I can put in some raised beds. I can
Yeah.
grow some peppers, some tomatoes, and get my kids out there again and let them see the plants. And it is it's all coming back. And as you
Yeah.
guys have both said, it is very good for the mental health. And what's one of the
Oh,
big things we're
huge.
talking about these days? Mental health, right?
Yeah,
So we
well,
need to do all these little things to do that
and
help
you talked
contribute to
about
our mental health.
healing. Jim, you mentioned healing this community. So this launch in Orlando, healing communities. Johann, you mentioned food deserts, but you talk about healing communities.
Yeah.
People get their hands in the soil and they watch their food grow and they watch their community and they work alongside their neighbor and you know, that is a healing, not only
Yeah.
internally by consuming food that is healthy and good,
Yeah.
but the healing of watching it happen.
Yeah.
Because it is magical. We
Oh,
can all agree
it's
plant growth is
yes.
magical. Johann, you're a doctor. Um, you're a PhD and you've studied food production for many years. Isn't it still pretty magical?
Oh yeah, I get a kick out of it. I have it's funny you mentioned that. A good friend of mine who also has a podcast and he does independent research. Um, Peter is his name. He has said that he still gets giddy when he sees a plant germinate. He says the day that I don't get excited when I see that lettuce seed or whatever it is I'm planting, the day I don't get excited when I see that plant grow, I know it's done. I'm done, and that day hasn't happened yet. And
Yeah.
so another thing that brought up, because very similar to what we're discussing here, there are many other groups and organizations that are along this way. One of them, I think, that reminds me is Stephen Ritz in the Bronx. He has brought in indoor ag to his students, and so I'm thinking with the food forest abundance movement and people being involved in rediscovering the benefits of plants is tying it all together. A little bit of greenhouse production, a little bit of food forest, because you can dedicate small little spaces to hydroponics. People are really rediscovering this, and I think that the more we get this messaging out. So I applaud you for the grand vision that you have, Jim. That that can really make a profound difference. And we just keep going.
Yeah, absolutely. Together, when enough people see this, and there's a tipping point, right? There's the pioneer stage and the early adopter stage, and I think
Right.
it's to about 9.2%. It's either 9.2 or 9.6, and then it's explosion.
Yep.
And we are getting up there so fast. There's more people starting to grow food now than any time in history because of necessity. But then when they realize that that necessity is actually becomes a joy, then they've crossed over. Then it's a done deal, right? Because once you experience that joy and you feel it, because it's the most sensory experience you could ever have. It literally touches all of the senses. When you walk into or even see a food forest, your all of your senses are just exploded. It's such a beautiful experience.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you have seen the movie Avatar, but you know how
Oh,
everything's connected, right? And
yeah.
we watched uh, we watched Fantastic Fungi, the documentary, a while ago, and they're talking about how the mycelium is all connected. I said, we got Avatar right here. We are
Yes.
connected to our surroundings. It's
Yes.
all connected. You look at the mycelium and the fungi. That's
Yeah.
not science fiction. That's
Right.
now we're not tapping right into it, but in a way we are. We are
We are.
connected to it.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. So you
Yes.
don't have to travel too far to find the science fiction. It's science fact.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah,
connected
I
to it.
got a vision regarding that. I was walking through meditating. It was full moon around this golf course, and this particular golf course, like 99% of them, is just riddled with poisons and ignorance. Now, a golf course can be a great golf course with food forests everywhere and amazing amounts of life, right? You just have to just modify your thinking a little bit, and it's infinitely better. Anyway, I'm walking through and I'm imagining the mushrooms, the mycelial network. In the future, once we get past this incredible time of contrast and all the craziness, we are, as a species, we're going to be able to reconnect with the mycelial network and we're going to be able to communicate somehow. I don't exactly know how, but through vibration and through an understanding of the connection, where we're going to work with the mycelial network and we're going to literally be able to create like that lava beast in Moana at the end. She puts her hands in the soil and the life just erupts. That's going to be the future of humanity someday.
Yeah, look at all the discoveries that are coming to light with like psychedelic mushrooms and how the components of that can help repair the neurons in our brain, right? And
Yes.
just how powerful that is, very natural, and if done responsibly, the
It's
impact that it
incredible.
has in lieu of synthetic drugs, right?
Yes.
There's just this high negative connotation around that, but that's a natural. I mean,
It's
most of our
illegal.
medications come
Yeah.
from plants,
All
and
of them do.
yeah, yeah,
Everything that actually heals the body comes from source, comes from nature or
yep.
God, whatever you believe. However you believe that, it's the same thing. It's just different ways of saying it. It comes from this thing that nobody can we can't it's way bigger than we could possibly comprehend because we as individuals are a little part of that. We are spirit, we are God living a divine experience, but are a little part of it, right? So yes, mushrooms have been proven all over the world to be incredible for PTSD and depression and connection. And if everybody had mushrooms right now, like thoughtfully, mindfully, the world would overnight be healed.
Yeah, people have reported just having such a profound impact on
Me.
how
Yes.
how their experience in
Yes.
life,
Yes.
and it completely changes perception,
It
for the
does.
better. It's
Yeah.
not very rarely a negative experience, all positive.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah,
And ayahuasca,
right.
peyote, there's different ibogaine, there's different functions of these tools that are God given and they're amazing. They solve all of it, but they're not controllable and they're free. or
Yeah.
maybe you've got to pay $50 for it.
Right.
But that's the problem, is that's the solution, actually.
Yeah.
That's where people like the allopathic, when it was, I think it was the Rockefellers who back 100 years ago went allopathic, and they started promoting and they started demonizing and making these incredible tools scary. And here's how profound this is. They created TV shows and movies called Reefer Madness. They
Right.
got into
Yep.
the church and called it the devil's lettuce, right? They got into the government and they made it illegal by blaming it on Mexican people who it was part of their culture, and they blamed it on the economy, right? So pretty much now cannabis was responsible for the fall of the world, where such an epic lie. The guy hired the FDA guy to do an article about how bad cannabis was, and he got it back, and he says, actually, it's pretty good for you. They threw that in the trash. Right? And that's the thing, is they make it illegal. The undoing of God's law is right there in front of us. And when we realize the language that encapsulates it, it's so profoundly obvious.
Yeah.
And the symbols are all found in nature.
Absolutely. I think it's somewhere, I don't, Bill, you might know the phrase, part of the Bible better than myself, but I'm pretty sure it says in there somewhere that we were given all the seed-bearing plants to use.
Yeah, all green
right?
plants.
And you
Mhm.
think of all the different plants out there, the wild plants. This is where I was also thinking about in a food forest, Jim, I recently just picked up some books here on me.
Nice.
Like Foraging Arizona,
Oh, wow.
Southwest Medicinal Plants,
Yeah.
the Modern Herbal Dispensatory, because of all of the wildly growing plants and their medicinal properties,
Yeah.
and thinking as part of a food forest. And comes back to the nameplates, right? If you're going along and hey, I could use this plant for this purpose. Tying this into controlled environment agriculture, this comes to a conversation I've had with my friend Dr. Peter in this Renaissance kind of movement that we're going through, this East meets West type of mentality in agriculture. We're rediscovering the benefits of soil. We're learning that 60 to 80 years of synthetic fertilizer is not good for the soil, and how a healthy soil, a spoonful of healthy soil, has billions of beneficial microbes, and that it's not full. Just the word bacteria or fungi, it's not a bad word. We've been led to believe it's a bad word. You hear bacteria, and you're like, ooh, but a lot of people don't realize, the layperson doesn't realize, a lot of those bacteria are responsible for so much. You'll need to listen to an episode that we recorded a couple weeks ago, once it's released, with Dr. James White from Rutgers, where he goes over rhizophagy and how plants harvest microbes like we harvest food. It's fascinating stuff, very fascinating, and it ties into the permaculture movement and right into that. So, yeah, I applaud you for everything you're doing. We would love to be involved in it moving forward. I do want to be respectful of your time, Jim. Is there anything else you wanted to cover today, or are there other questions that maybe you thought we should ask that we didn't?
Well, I would just like to invite anybody who, if you would like to grow food at your home and you would like to speed up time instead of going on YouTube and doing all that, we would love to do a custom food forest landscape design for you. And if you'd like to be in the business of helping other people grow food, imagine what's happening with the food security, the food supply chain, and all that right now. And to be in the business of helping people grow food is very well positioned. And so we've got 45 designers. We're one of the fastest growing cooperatives in the world. We've got 140 co-ops all over the world. And that's our mission, is to help people be prepared and be abundant. So I invite you all to reach out to us at foodforestabundance.com, and we'll see how we collaborate.
Absolutely. And on that website, I believe it has all your social media, the Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn, everything they can find on the website.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm pretty easy to get a hold of. At least at the moment, it's starting to get where I'm 18-hour days. But we've got an incredible team of people, and we have one mission, and that's freedom. The food forest, abundance, food forest everywhere equals freedom. And that's demonstratable. That's how we change the world.
And Jim,
Excellent.
I have, the more we talk, the more I want to talk. to you.
Awesome, buddy.
But we gotta end it somewhere for your sake.
Yeah. Well, let's do it again sometime soon.
We could absolutely. Well, let me ask the head of the podcast. What do you think, Johann?
Well, I didn't want to. I didn't want to. I wasn't suggesting that we have to end it right now. I want to make sure we're respectful of Jim's time. I know we kind of scheduled it for a certain amount of time. If he has more time and you have a question, I'm happy to keep rolling. I don't want to just cut it off. But if we's jamming here, I don't want to.
I'm gonna let my dog out. My mom accidentally let the dog in. He's scratching the door, but I'll be back in.
Sure, yeah, no
3
worries.
seconds.
That's what I love about podcasts. We can either keep this in or cut it out. I think we'll just keep it in.
Okay, sorry about
that.
Yeah.
Sure.
No worries.
As you two were discussing, Oregon recently, last election cycle, voted to do research on psilocybin mushroom, and they're doing a really good job with that.
Yeah.
And going forward, and then Jim, you started to share about how these things were demonized. I grew up in a pretty conservative world, my family, etc. I've gotten to know the cannabis industry a bit through BioAg. That's a big cannabis growers are familiar with our products.
Awesome.
But I just had this thought of, that was sent down. So let's call that medicine, right? Yeah. Body healing, mind healing stuff. That was sent down the track of evil so that there could be some control, right? Yes. Agriculture did the same thing in the post-World War I. They developed, nitrate fertilizer. And the fact is it did, I think in some parts of the world, it saved us because we were on the verge of starvation. But the study of humates and, soil biology kind of went down that track. And again, control, big pharma, big ag, whatever. Johann, you have a quote that you always say, because you came out of that controlled environment world, soilless medium, blah, blah, blah. What was it that you...
Oh, the only thing missing from soilless agriculture is the soil?
Right.
Right. That's a good one.
Not that that's a bad thing. There's a reason why we're rediscovering the benefits of soil, and now we're all of a sudden starting to add in the soil components. You're adding in bacteria and fungi and
the humates.
There's this idea that it has to be sterile, and in some ways, I understand the reasoning behind that and agree. However, there are the other components, and we're adding them back in.
Right. And Johann and I get the challenge of communicating to conventional agriculture the benefits of, the microbial world in the soil. And it's more limited in the greenhouse. There are living soils in the greenhouse in some production systems. But these, components, have a huge benefit. But I'm talking to commercial ag guys, growing grains and grasses for seed and say, hey guys, the most important part of this, we sit in a room, Johann, you were there sitting with a big distributor trying to communicate the principles of soil biology. And it's like deer in the headlights. These guys know how to grow crops. They do. They've been doing it for decades, and they do it really well. And they're feeding, synthetics, inorganics, deal with the pest, the bacteria, bad guy, right? Johann, you just said that. Fungi, bad guy. We got to spray it out. We got to control it. So Jim, just picture big ag, big corn, soy ag, and there is a regenerative movement there. There is organic production. We work with a distributor in the Midwest that is really focused. I know you do it on a homeowner scale, but what suggestions would you have to communicate to a big ag guy or a big CA?
I've got it. It's the most logical and simple suggestion in the world. One is these ag guys are mining an asset in a way that is unsustainable. All unsustainable systems fail, right? Yes, they know how to grow a massive amount of food by mining, right? But Joel Salatin, for instance, a friend of mine, a collaborator, he grows several different types of meats, cows and chickens and pigs and different things in a way that actually builds soil.
Mm-hmm.
And here's the big and this is the one that makes all the difference. He makes more money per acre by far than the guy next to him who does it the bad way, the way that's death. Right? Same thing here. I know people who are making $100,000 a year net profit on less than an acre. Now, what do you make in the big world of agriculture per acre? What is it? 3,000
3,000 per what?
acre. Like how much does a
Oh
big less than
no,
that?
no, way less. Way
Okay, so
less.
now with just changing the whole thought process and creating diversity, you can make way more money. At the end of the day, it's about feeding the family and having a sustainable income, right? You can make way more money doing it this way. So start in a particular area of your yard, and and that's how we do it. Is we show them how to start, how to get it going in a way where they can make a transition without losing everything. And it's a transition that's beneficial on every single level.
Yeah, I saw here recently. I've started to really pick up. The algorithm is working on LinkedIn. I'm getting introduced to more and more regenerative people and regenerative farms, and you're seeing in a lot of areas the U-pick movement really
Yeah.
picking up, and that's a great way to make a profit on the doing. It's just good. It's good all around. It's a win-win for everybody. Win for the soil, win for the plant, win for the family, and win for the consumer is tying in the UPIC agriculture model with the regenerative ag movement. There's a lot of really interesting things
Yeah.
going on out there. Now, on the grand scale of things, we do need to figure out the macro economy. I think is what you were asking, Bill.
Think global, act local
Right?
is the solution,
Yeah.
right? And to do that, we inspire the backyard to put in three guilds that will produce hundreds of thousands of calories per year, right? In a way that's building soil and providing bee habitat and bird habitat and taking out the supply chain from 1,500 miles, which is about the average I keep hearing, to 150 feet. Now we change everything.
Yeah.
I
Wonderful.
Jim, I watched you do one of your talks was with it sounded like a friend of yours, and you were going to put in a food forest in his office or near his office, and remember he said, "Oh yeah, we've got a spot right over there for you," and you looked at it and you said, "Nope, it's going right here." It's right by the kitchen door. And I think of that all the time. We put this was another question for you, Jim, that I wanted to bring up. So we grow up in as far as landscape and even gardens and so on, straight rows, weed free, borders sprayed, irrigation, impact head sprinklers in our garden, that lawns that are perfectly trimmed, edged, borders established. How do you communicate to a newbie, to a neophyte to food forest? What you're seeing is not disorder. What you're seeing is diversity. How do you communicate that? Because there is pushback there from people. They want to see the order, and we see it in the ag community too. In the commercial ag, it has to look perfect.
I know. We demonstrate it. We don't talk about it. We say, here's syntropic agroforestry. We've got a bunch of rows here at Gauss Landing where we put in this one row. It's 500 feet, and it's kind of a double row. It's about 8 feet wide. And on that row, we've got about 60, 70 different species of food, different types of food growing. And we've done zero maintenance for the last 15 months. Zero. And it's exploding with life. There's food growing everywhere. And the value of that one row is way more valuable than many acres of what you're doing, Mr. Farmer. With respect, why don't you try this on several rows now? And over time, it'll all go that way. And then you pick it, the tours, the amount of energy when you stack the functionality of a food forest, it becomes a nursery, right? And these mono and these crazy GMOs. Now you can't even sell seeds because they don't work. Like, that's just crazy. So now you've got a nursery that provides massive abundance, on infinite abundance, actually, over time.
Yeah, I think you're fast tracking it in many ways, which is great because we're seeing it in commercial ag. We're seeing the ground covers going in on corn crops,
Yes. Oh
and
gosh.
yeah, and tying it and animal production.
Yes.
Uh,
Mixing in the animals.
yeah, there's one guy I'd like to interview, Bill. I haven't brought it up yet. There's a guy based out in I think San Diego County, and he's a poultry producer, and he's designed a system instead of having a fixed poultry house. It's
Yeah.
it's mobile because in the regenerative market
Yes. Yes.
they move the chicken coops around. Well, he's
Yes.
on a commercial scale now. He's
Yeah.
moving his every day. It's moving, and the ground is just free, good forage, right? And the chickens are contributing to that ecosystem, and it's moving on. And he's
Yes.
replenishing the soil, so you
And
don't
the
have to
chickens are
have.
healthy.
Exactly. The chicken,
Oh
the quality,
gosh.
I'm sure, is better, right? And it's not a fixed
Yes.
concrete movement. So there's a lot of things, a lot of good things happening, and I really
Yes.
hope that it can. I'm sure it's going to continue.
Two
And
things that
yeah,
I
go.
really want to jump in on. Okay, so what Joe Salin has done, and he's got a TED talk about this. He actually has shown that his method will be the method for the carbon footprint narrative. And his method of growing cows actually sequesters more carbon by far. The other thing is, there's a citrus greening is a major issue here in Florida.
Right.
Well, there's a guy up here that put in all the ground cover about 3 years ago, and he did it the regenerative, natural permaculture way. He now is the only farm in his area, with farms all around him. They're all greening. He has built his immune system, his soil up in such a way his citrus aren't having any problems.
Is it because that orchard is the psyllid pressure is low? I mean, I'm wondering if is it because
It's
the psyllids are being consumed by natural biodiversity, or a combination of.
Yes, the immune system, right? In us, it's the macrophages, right? In the soil, it's the psyllids. They're yes, their immune system is functioning the way it should, and so the trees are stronger, which means they're not as susceptible to disease and disease.
No, that's great. Yeah, because that citrus greening is wreaking havoc on the citrus
Yeah,
industry for sure.
yeah, yeah,
Those nasty little psyllids. I think that's the
yeah.
insect that's good that vectors that virus or bacteria or something like that. Yeah. Cool.
Amazing. So awesome, guys. Well, I think I love this. I'm so glad this is a different type of talk, and I'm so glad that I'm talking to ag professionals from different perspectives, right? And that's the thing, is when we bring all of our perspectives together and we simply ask, what is the best ROI? What's the best yield? And we factor in not just yield of the particular tree, which is probably the number one factor. How much is it worth? What's the nutrient density? And are we mining soil or building soil, which is the most important yield, because one way is death and the other way is more life, right? So when we stack all of those functions, I'm glad to be talking to you guys about it. Thank you.
Yeah, and we appreciate your time and speaking with us. Yeah, this has been great.
Yeah,
Awesome.
Jim, these are concepts that transcend just agriculture, but let's start there, right?
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
yes. The
Yep.
world needs to start with agriculture.
That's right. That's
Awesome,
right.
guys.
Well,
Wow.
cool. Well, I think maybe we'll leave it there on a great note. We'd love to
Yeah,
do it again. Let's stay in touch. We can catch up
that'd be great.
afterwards. If whether it's today or next week, um,
Perfect.
figure out how we can collaborate. We'd love to do so.
Yeah.
And Jim, thank you so much for your time. God
Thank
bless,
you,
and we wish
guys.
you well.
Thank you, Jim. Thank you,
Yes.
Jim.
Thank you all. Have a great day, everybody.
Yeah, you
Okay.
too. All right, this is the afterthought segment. That was cool.
It was really cool. My mind is swimming. In
Yeah,
a
mine
way.
too. I really
good way.
appreciate people out there with a good message, vision. I think sincerely wanting to help improve, good stewards of the land, improve the life and well-being of
Good stewards of the body,
others. Yeah,
good stewards of the community.
right.
Yeah. And my I guess since we're talking about afterthoughts, I think the one that's just the big bubble above my head is really searching out what fashion you communicate this soil health message to the world, all phases. And you and I work with ag and food production, but agriculture as a mindset. How do we best communicate that? We can't come charging in with both barrels blazing, ramming down the throats of current conventional agriculture. You're killing the soil. You're on a dying system. You built a dying system. You gotta kind of do a little two-step around them and say, this is important.
Yeah.
But it is a paradigm shift, right? Like Jim was
Oh yeah,
talking
it
about.
absolutely is. Absolutely is. And I'd like to see more, again, education. You think about the documentaries you see on agriculture, it's always you're killing the soil, you're doing this, and you're the
we're all
evil,
gonna die.
yeah.
Yeah.
And, hey, every industry has their black eyes, right? And but it's coming back to how to change some of the things. I think it is changing, but is it changing fast enough and at a large enough scale? A lot of good monoculture systems out there that are organic, people building the soil. As I've said to you time and time again, I think what is the answer? I think it's a combination of all of the above. I mean, we need to have enough. We need to have enough food. We need to be able to show that these systems that are being built are healthier, the yield, the ROI, right? Because sustainable to a farmer is being able to sustain their livelihood, their business. That's sustainable. To other people, it's, I think, the earthly, ecological, safe, and that's okay too, right?
Right. And Jim mentioned, he said, so what does a farmer make on an acre? And he said $3,000, and I got to laugh. I mean,
yeah, I was trying to figure out which crop might make $3,000 an acre.
The margins are so small.
Yeah.
And generally, and this isn't really a conspiracy theory, but for some reason, year to year, it seems like the farmer always gets his same little margin, no matter where crop prices are. Inputs are high, crop prices are high, little margin. Inputs are low, crop prices aren't so good, little margin. And it seems year in, year out that is true.
Yeah.
But yeah, how to best communicate, the magic of soil biology. That's really the bottom line.
Well, I think we're rediscovering that and are seeing the benefits. I mean, that's the thing is you have to. You're a farmer. What did you need to see in order to make a change? What convinced you, or what would need to be presented to convince you to go in that more of a biological direction versus the neat rows, clean soil, no weeds, no this, no that, right? What causes that mindset shift?
Well, it's probably the same shift that a homeowner would go through when we talk about Jim's plan. What appears to be disorder is actually the ROI is much improved.
Yeah.
It ain't pretty. Like it isn't symmetrical. It isn't a monoculture, which we're used to seeing. Mixing in livestock. You got to build a fence. You got to, there's lots of pieces and parts to it. But I ask myself that question all the time, Johann, and it starts with, just talking about soil health and, what's really going on there. As I'm learning more, then I can share more.
Yeah.
And so you asked me what would change my mind. I want to say, return on investment, but we're so brainwashed into, yield and perfection, visual perfection. That oftentimes, well, we know that pushing yield does not translate to profit. We know that. The guys that are low cost guys and their fields don't always look perfect, they're returning the better money by far. And I guess, so yeah, to answer your question, I'd like to say that's it for all farmers. Because like we've said, Johann, no farmer has ever intentionally effed up his property or his soil. They don't.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a fact.
I've never met a farmer that says that I spray it because I want to spray it.
Yeah.
It's like, I want to spend all this money on pesticides. I want to spray all this stuff.
No. Yeah. Anyway, that's all.
You show me a better way and I'll do it.
Exactly.
Yeah, right?
Exactly. And oftentimes it is a show. It is a show.
Well, I think it's also, you hit upon it. This nice, neat, like fields need to be manicured like a botanical garden, right? With topiaries. You didn't have to be beautiful. It's the same thing with HOAs. Try growing some food in the front of your home in most HOAs and see how quickly you get it fined.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
And the list of plants you can and can't grow. Now, I do agree with some of those. We have a tree here in Arizona, the sisu tree. Worst tree ever. Like, I'm sure it has some benefit. It's fast growing, it's lush, but I'm telling you, it's the worst for landscape. It's destructive. It's just, I hate them. Right? They're one of the ones that are banned. Okay, I get that. But yeah, as we were going through that interview, I was picturing, we have several parks, a lot of places, and they don't get used. It's just a green belt. People like to see green grass.
Yeah.
How do we change that mindset to say, what if we had some orchards? How much water do we allocate to each one of these green belts? Because we use a lot of water, and our grass seed budget alone is astronomical.
Especially last year.
So what if we had food belt zones or something like that? There's the whole liability. But dude, there's so many liabilities in HOA. If they're so concerned about liabilities, I tell them to go take a look at our pool and all the non-residents that come over and use our pool. We don't have lifeguards. If somebody who's a non-resident's using it and gets hurt or climbs over the fence, I mean, there's so many different liabilities, right? Food should not be one of those liabilities.
Food should not be a liability. No.
It shouldn't, especially if it's taken well care of. And I think then you also have to get the landscape maintenance companies to buy in to this. I do appreciate the idea of creating an asset over a liability.
Yes.
We as homeowners of this area, right, this community should be an asset all the way around and limit our liabilities. And if we could produce something to offset the homeowner fees, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that
I would be all
blows
over
me
that.
away. Yeah.
Although I'm really glad I'm not paying his HOA fees. That he said $750 to $1,000 a month.
Yikes.
I thought, holy cow, I'm going to stop complaining about mine. And it's pretty high.
Yeah.
It's pretty high as it is. Oh, man. I'm glad I'm not paying those fees. What homeowner wouldn't want to get paid or offset their HOA fees?
Right.
Yeah. So many neat plants that can be grown. When I brought up those books, just starting to look at the indigenous plants in each one of our geographies. In the Pacific Northwest, you're going to have indigenous plants. In the Southwest, we're going to have indigenous plants that are multi-purpose. Food, medicine, right? They're not always pretty, but that's when it comes down to the education and mindset, right? So that'd be cool.
I ain't that pretty either, Johann, but I'm fairly useful.
Hey, me neither, man. Me neither. But that was a good one.
Really
For
good.
those, the listeners may notice, hey, where's Josh? Josh couldn't be with us today, so it's just me and Bill. We miss Josh on this episode. But yeah, I'm really curious to see what he has in mind for collaborating, and I'm really curious to see what Jim has going for the July event. Sounds like a lot of influential people are involved. We'll have to find out how we get involved in that, and we'll make sure his link is in the show notes at Food Forest Abundance, and listeners can go there and learn more. Maybe get a blueprint, what have you. It's like I said, there's a lot of people. The homestead movement right now. I follow a lot of people that are, moving to different states. They're buying up homes or buying land, or they're just their existing home. They're installing more gardens. I have one buddy who he and his wife built a whole bunch of raised beds, more almost like quadruple what they had last year. So there's definitely the interest. The interest is there.
Oh, yes. Definitely. It's definitely a growing, and we've talked about BioAg becoming, in the homeowner type markets. And, something like this with Food Forest may kind of push us that direction. Could be very good for everybody.
It could. Even if it's just a small part, right? I think the idea of that is the self-sustaining and the cycling and that. Yeah, I'm totally down with that. Low inputs. But every now and again, you need to put something into the system. That's what I like about biostimulants. You put, and it's not a great investment, and you put it in there and it just makes it better. It takes it up a notch. Yep.
But it is a combo.
Absolutely. I'm sure, I'm confident BioAg has a place there. I mean, just look at what we do with our home gardens and how we can apply our various products into those systems. They're applicable all across the board, from the homeowner all the way to the largest commercial farm.
Absolutely true. Because that's what it's all about.
Yep.
Soil.
Yep. Start with the soil. Absolutely. Well, good. Anything else, friend?
No, I'm good. I've got another hour's worth of questions for Jim, but and probably 2 hours for you, but we can't do that. Thank you, Johann.
Yeah, thank you, Bill.
Well done.
All right, and we thank the listeners. Don't forget, here come the corny lines. Like and subscribe, share. You know the drill.
Yeah.
All right.
Good.
Till next time. Yep.
Till next time.